Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies for the delay in getting started. We had a technical issue. I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this webinar this afternoon. I'm joined by Mark Holton, a Director of Smith Inc. How are you today, Mark?
Yeah, very well, Peter. Yourself? Great to be here.
Very good, thanks. And I hope that you're having a good day and not getting too wet in Sydney.
No, Peter, it's nice and sunny here today. A lot of winds, but nice and sunny. No rain so far, touch wood.
Right. Okay. Well, today we want to talk about how can accountants differentiate their accountancy businesses, and does research and development activities help them? So what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, Peter, I'm a big believer, as you probably know, on accounting firms getting out there and doing something in the advisory space. I recently presented at a conference to around 130 accountants face-to-face, believe it or not. And
right.
Question about what are they doing with advisory. Many said that they were forced into advisory through the COVID period because clients needed certain things done, from budgets, cash flows, some business plans, some recovery plans and sustainability plans and the like. But not many of them said to me that they have created the structured process so that that type of work can be done again, again, again. Many said to me they were doing a lot of stuff that was more piecemeal orientated. In other words, stuff that you'd probably do once but wouldn't look to repeat, or maybe you could review it a little bit further down the track. Things
right.
like estate planning, things like succession planning. I look at R&D and think that's another huge opportunity for the industry to be able to do something to help clients create better businesses, more successful businesses, businesses that have the ability to be worth more tomorrow than what they're worth today. So, Pete, rather long-winded way of saying I see R&D as an important advisory service that should be part of the firm's overall suite of services.
Thank you. And it's incidentally, anyone who is watching this as a live webinar, if you have any questions, can you please send them through to us? Just type them into your computer and we will answer them during the presentation. Mark, there's over 13,000 companies involved in the research and development incentive rebate scheme that's administered by AusIndustry and the Australian Taxation Office. I suspect that the majority of those would be drawn from small, medium-sized enterprises, or even just individuals that started tinkering with something. What opportunities does that give to accountants?
Well, Peter, I think for starters, the accounting industry needs to get their head around the research and development provisions, the rules, the regulations, the requirements, the benefits. I think many of us tend not to worry too much about that until it's straight in front of our face. So maybe it is a small business client that's looking to move into an R&D possibility, or a sole practitioner who's just developed something is now looking at R&D options. So I think we've got to get aware of it first of all. Like anything in accounting firms, it's very helpful to have resources that can assist us to do it properly and do it right. So I think that's something we need to consider. But probably more importantly, is what I'm basically saying is we need systems, we need processes, but we also need people. We need someone that can sort of champion that in the firm, someone that might be willing to do a little bit of research, do a little bit of additional work. So look, I see it as a major opportunity, but I liken it with some firms to things like estate planning and succession planning. Great idea. Should be doing more of it. Where do we start?
Yes, and one of the problems is that whilst I suspect that the vast majority, or a majority, probably that's a better way of putting it, a majority of those 13,000 companies started off as SMEs, they tend to be bypassing the small and medium-sized accounting firms at present. I suspect that's because as far as I know, no one had ever developed a step-by-step process, which is what we at ESS BIZTOOLS have now done, which hopefully enables smaller firms to get involved with this activity with their clients, and then to grow with their clients, because this all links in. And the government really has got a master plan involving the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant Program and raising capital through early stage innovation companies. So I suspect that if accountants want to be part of this, they should be getting on the ground floor and trying to find clients that have developed ideas and want to go into research and development.
Well, Pete, it all needs to be part of a plan. You know, I'm a big believer the firm needs to have a business advisory implementation plan and work out what services they're going to offer. Now, if R&D is one of those services, then it comes back to, okay, well, what type of R&D services do you intend offering? How will you explain the benefit to a client? What will you charge? And then do you have the infrastructure within your firm and the skilled people and the resources to be able to do this systematically? Or, you know, I think the problem is a lot of piecemeal, in inverted commas, advisory stuff we tend to do because it's there. We tend to sort of shuffle our way through it and get through it and bill it accordingly because we're experienced in that. We are great advisors in this game. But turning it into a more systematic process is the challenge. Getting the right people in the firm to do the right task at the right pay grade is a challenge. And often what I find with some of these higher level advisory services is too many of the partners are doing too much of the heavy lifting. When, you know, a skilled person underneath them can be doing much, much more. You know, the partner's role in my mind is interaction with the client development, client enhancement, client nurturing. So we've got to get that system underneath it so the right people do it. And so the system's scalable, just in case somebody's not there, you know, surely something can jump in there. And it's also my belief that every accounting firm has already developed that system in the compliance model. Because everyone I go and talk to, they have the right people doing the right job at the right rate. They have systems and processes. They do a lot of training and development. So there's a lesson there in what we do in compliance that needs to be articulated to non-compliance activities.
And it could be argued, of course, that research and development is also under the tax office. So it's under this general control of tax, which is what a significant number of accountants prefer to be working in that area.
Pete, I noticed there's a question on the live poll. Maybe I need to phrase this to you. The question is, how does Oz Industry and the ATO audits on R&D impact accountants advising clients when the client's claim is denied? How much time and effort goes into defending a client's R&D claim?
The audit activity is, I'll just remove that for a moment. We are dealing with the tax office, of course, in research and development, and everything is subject to review and audit. We're also dealing with Oz Industry. So the return relating to projects that have been undertaken and the detailed summary of what work's been undertaken is what is submitted to Oz Industry 10 months after the end of the financial year. So that report is due in by the 30th of April, 5 weeks' time, for the 2019-20 year. Now that information needs to be prepared accurately and is a proper reflection. If information is going in on that return or in the tax return that is not able to be supported, well, the company will have problems or potential problems with the tax office. Now, they only do random audits. They're not doing every audit. They're not checking every client. But if the right information is not submitted, we've designed our system on the basis that there are numerous forms there that meet every contingency as we see it to ensure that the information is prepared correctly and the proper processes have been gone through in the first place. Ultimately, though, the tax office, in conjunction with Oz Industry, can reject a claim. It's like any other claim that's been submitted to the tax office. The client then needs to make a decision as to whether they are going to appeal that decision. And it's a cost like any other. I must admit, I have not actually checked, but I imagine the tax office insurance policies that most accountants have got these days would cover that. And it's like any other dispute unfolding with the tax office.
Pete, have you had much experience with firms that are undergoing ATO audits and R&D?
To be honest, no, I haven't heard of any of late, but
yeah,
it's always,
I haven't heard of too
it's
many.
an occupational hazard. It will occur. I've been involved in a couple of very big R&D claims of late, and I'd been rather surprised that there'd been no contact made, I'm told, by the company and the accountants in the previous 5 years by either ATO or Oz Industry. So no, I don't know. There was a fair bit of criticism a couple of years ago at the lateness of tax office action, and the small business ombudsman, Kate Carnell, who finishes this week in that role, she's retiring, had issued a report in December 2019, which criticised the tax office for their delay in taking audit action, sometimes as late as 4 years after the return, and was advocating that if they were going to take or make inquiries, they should be made in the first year when everything was still fresh in people's minds. A lot of the problems emerged, though, on how diligent the client has been in undertaking the prior art searches. That is not just for Australia, it's for the world. And the client needs to maintain an appropriate record of what searches they made. If they've used the internet, they need to put in their keywords that they've put in and print out the responses. And if they're interpreting those responses to say that no one has already undertaken that activity, they need to make sure it is date stamped, which it would be if it's come off Google, and that they retain that as part of their information, because it's at that date that they've got to be able to substantiate that there was no prior art or literature. Also, it's a very good idea to get opinions from experts. They might be people associated with universities or other research centres. I understand that there's some confidentiality potential issues there. They may be acting for a competitor, but bearing in mind, this is meant to be new knowledge. And the system that we have written really emphasises that. This has got to be new knowledge. You can't get research and development rebates for copying what someone's already developed in Canada, for argument's sake. Yeah. The tax office will not allow that. And this is a requirement for an accountant advising in this area. I accept that. But accountants are giving advice on a whole range of issues to deal with the tax office on other issues. This is just one more of them.
So Pete, just following up on that, you've made a couple of really important points. One is we should be having discussions in practice with clients around audit insurance for anything to do with R&D. The second one is, let's imagine I'm an accounting firm and I'm looking to get into R&D as a potential catch-up, potential introduction to my advisory services or an enhancement of what I'm currently doing. What can ESS BIZTOOLS do for me in practice land to help me manage R&D just that little bit better?
Yeah, we're saying to our subscribers, where every subscriber, first of all, gets a number of hours of mentoring where we take them through the system, because we want to make sure that people are using the system properly, and that's why I'm emphasising the necessity to make sure that prior art or literature searches have been done appropriately, and then they are documented, because no one will be able to prove in 3 to 4 years' time what they might have found on the internet at that stage unless they did a search. But you need to go beyond the internet. You need to be searching the US Patent Office, the Australian Patent Office through IP Australia, and other registries around the world. It's just not a matter of thinking of something and then blindly going ahead and undertaking a research and development project and thinking your client's going to get the tax office rebate, or not the tax office, the tax rebate at 43.5%.
Gotcha, Pete. So the ESS BizTools R&D module, how would that help me as a practitioner to get more R&D work going in my firm?
Included in it, first of all, is some marketing promotional literature to put details on the firm's website that they're interested in R&D. It's one of the, and then some material they can mail around to the clients. I think they need to run some education sessions via webinars or seminars to talk about it and raise concepts that perhaps during the COVID-19 lockdowns and working from home and not being able to go to the footy on a weekend that's been going on, that a client may have been tinkering and may have developed a prototype or started to design a computer program or something. What do they want to do with it? Is this just a hobby? If it's a hobby, it's not R&D rebate claimable. Or is it something they think is serious? Then they can start talking to those clients. And the first step then, if the client's keen that this is a product that they can develop, they need to get the client into a company, because none of this can be claimed unless the activity has been undertaken via a company. And then it's a matter that ensuring that the system, and what we have done in our package that our subscribers are obtaining, is we've developed a white label package that as an accountant signs up a client, they can badge it with that client's name and download it onto the client's computers, because it's the client's prime responsibility to keep the records. There's all the forms there. The accountant's got a copy on their system. They can be communicating with them and checking it, but making sure that the system is appropriately recording what is a core R&D project. What is it? What is the hypothesis? And that is basically a statement that has to be proven or disproven. And what experiments were undertaken to do that proving or disproving of the hypothesis, making sure that it has been documented. And it's not a one-line document. On some clients, you will probably find there's 2 to 4 pages of information per R&D project, per core project, giving the information that Oz Industry wants to see so that their people can go through it and make up their minds whether a proper series of experiments has been undertaken. And they may be the instigators of the tax office coming back and saying, well, what led you to believe that this was going to be new knowledge? What searches did you undertake for the client to believe that they were going to create new knowledge?
Gotcha, Pete. It's good advice. Thanks for that.
I hope that that's answered our inquirer's question. I don't know who you are, but if you want to talk to me later, can you just send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au, or give me a ring on 1-800-232-088, please, and we'll see if there's other areas. No one is saying that this is foolproof as such. We are dealing with the tax office. We're dealing with Oz industry. But there's a lot of people, a lot of companies around Australia successfully been able to claim this, but it has to be approached in a proper methodical way. In fact, the key words in this whole system are the systematic progression of work is how the government expects the company to be undertaking the research and development project. And therefore, that's the way that the individual companies should be keeping all of their records. It's not a matter of sitting down on the 30th of June or the 29th of April in a few weeks' time and suddenly doing all this. It should have been getting recorded day by day, week by week, month by month. And I think that's very important. And the key component of the costs of R&D will mainly be employees, the team members in a firm. So they need to be recording on their timesheets or whatever other recording method that they're using, which is showing the project they're working on, preferably with a research and development project number that the company's allocated to them. And they should also be describing what the employee has done. You know, they've worked on the project for an hour. What did they do? Our recommendation is that the company establish task codes for a whole series of work. So one of the clients I'm working on, it's got over 100 task codes, which are displayed around their factory so that the team can go to the list of task codes and know what they've worked on, and they insert that into their records so that the time can be recorded. And that's the systematic approach to the whole thing. And if you've got a external consultant or contractor or academic working on the project, it's basically the same approach. They should be submitting their tax invoice with their details of the time that they spent on the various research and development jobs. You can also have, Mark, supporting research and development activities, and our system clearly identifies, we have a special form for it, because supporting research and development activities don't stand up on their own. They must have a linkage back to a core research and development item. And that needs to be identified, and then the costs of that supporting research and development activity also needs to be recorded and maintained. And it all figures in the overall sum of money that the 43.5% rebate is calculated on when all this has been finalised.
Gotcha.
So I suppose I think I've said it there before, but no one can sit back and say you use our system or anyone else's systems and you will never get inquiries from the tax office or Oz industry. That's their role, to make inquiries. And if the records have been kept honestly, I think the company should be able to meet that obstacle when it comes along.
Good advice, Pete. Thanks for that.
So I'll just check to see whether we've got no other inquiries or questions at this stage. What this all gets back to, though, Mark, is this whole concept of differentiation and what it really means, and whether accountants are doing it just because things went a bit different in the last year because of COVID-19, which I think we're still going to feel the impacts of for some time yet, or whether this is a real shift in the understanding. Prior to COVID-19, we had the Commonwealth Bank's report, and I'm looking for, I don't think their latest one's out, I'm looking for the next update, where they really predicted that more and more accountants were going to be adopting the concept of supplying business advisory services. Now, COVID-19 had just started when they did their research and published that, but they'd said the same thing the year before, that they saw a trend emerging. do you see that this trend's going to continue, or do you think that when the JobKeeper, which obviously finishes next week, and when the original special loans, the 50% guarantee by the Commonwealth finished at the 30th of June, they're still the new loans, but they're only for the current JobKeeper recipients. Do you think at the end of all that, accountants are going to go back to where they were doing their traditional work? Or do you think that a significant number of them are going to be saying, well, we should really be looking at continuing this trend on of getting involved in a diversified range of services for our clients?
It's a good question, Peter. I think a large number of firms were looking at moving down the advisory pathway. I'm getting more inquiries than ever before from firms starting to want to talk about how do I do it, where do I start, what sort of staff do I need, what services will I offer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which all leads into the development of a plan. Many of the firms that I had spoken to and I was going to go and work with them, I was put off last year because they had to go back and divert to the COVID issues, helping clients manage the stimulus measures, JobKeeper, loan deferrals, rent deferrals, and the like. I think some people happily went back to that compliance model because, let's be honest, it's profitable. If you bill it, that is. And it's also pretty safe. Advisories will be profitable if done properly. Advisory will diversify your firm, will provide greater opportunities for expansion into target clients if it's done properly. I still see the old chicken and egg problem, Pete, and that is capacity. That the people we're targeting to do it are the ones who have the least capacity. And that means that the structure of the firm's not right. So in my mind, the first thing we're going to do is get the right structure in place. Firms that have had success with advisory have bitten the bullet and created a division. Whether that division is one person half their time, or that person plus an intermediate plus an admin person, maybe on half time till it grows legs, they've made that call.
Yeah.
Where it struggles is when we take busy people who are already busy, already lack capacity, and try to put these tasks on top of them. Because ultimately we're human. We'll fall back to what we're comfortable with. So it's, in my mind, the most critical part is getting the structure right in your firm.
Yeah.
Getting a commitment from the owners, the board, to do this. Working out a model that will have a chance of success. Then getting the infrastructure right. That is, who's going to do what, when, how. What are we going to offer? Who are we going to offer it to? How are we going to explain it? What are we going to price it at? How do we package it? It's near impossible to go to market if you don't know what you're selling. You don't know how much it costs. But, I walk into firms that are doing a lot of advisory. Often they're not billing all of it. I don't think sometimes that they bill what they probably should do based on value, because value is a bit hard to measure, Pete. So we've got to have a bit of a think about that too. But to answer the question very directly, yes, there are more firms looking to move into advisory. But the same issues apply in 2021 that were applying in 2019 and early 2020, and that is the 2 C's, commitment, capacity.
Yeah.
And unless we get the commitment to change the model and the capacity to deliver these services, we'll unfortunately still be doing it very haphazardly, very piecemeal orientated, and certainly not in an annuity type process like we do with the tax work we do.
Yep. Yep.
But I think the industry has to go that way.
Yeah.
I don't really think it has a choice as we move forward. We've got to start to look for diversified income streams in the firm and start to explore them, develop them, and enhance them if you're already doing it.
Yeah, so on your point there about the separate division, I had one of our new subscribers today. We had a mentoring session as part of her contract with us, and she's forming a separate company to handle the consulting work, as she calls it. distinct from her professional practice, moving a couple of people across, as you said, and going to run it separately. And she was making comments similar to what a number of other people are saying. After 20 or 30 years in an accountancy firm, they're getting a bit bored, a bit tired of the compliance work and wanting to do something else. And that's great as long as you have delegated properly within your accounting firm, if the principal's then going to move across to being more involved in compliance work, because we don't want to end up with a problem back in the traditional taxation area, because it's still a very strong part of the cash flow of businesses
it's
at this
still the bread
stage.
and butter of every accounting firm. It's like a builder building houses. You don't stop building houses. You might diversify and do it a bit different. You might take on other projects, but ultimately you still resource your core business.
Yep.
You know, compliance is our core business. You know, around the world, models are changing in countries quite closely orientated to our tax system, particularly the UK. But it's not a game changer at the moment. And you know, whether we go down that pathway, time will tell. I know there's a lot of skeptics in the industry that think that the ATO will never get themselves organised enough to create a true digital pathway for small business directly to the ATO. But hey, maybe they will. It might just take longer. If that happens, I wouldn't want to be the firm that then says, okay, what do I do?
Yep.
I'd want to be the firm that already has done something and has protection around the models that they operate in their firm, and where the disruption would be minimal, which means they've got to start to do something now, Pete. The time has come. If I was still in practice and only recently got out of practice, I would have gone out and met every single small business owner who got JobKeeper and then started to fall off the system. I would have had a cup of coffee with every one of them. I would have spoken to them about nothing other than what's your plan to go forward, what's your plan to get back to where you were before COVID hit. And if you can't walk out of that with something to do, then there's something wrong with your, engagement skills.
Yes, I agree. And in our system, we have got an SME needs analysis. It's based on Andrew Geddes' original document many years ago. I think anyone that sits down with that and talks to a client's got to get a job, because you're going to unearth something that the client wants done. I think
never done one needs analysis where I didn't learn something about the client, Pete.
That's right.
Or walked away with something the client needed.
That's right. And
very hard to predict that before you do it. Very hard to know what they need if you don't ask them.
Yeah, and sometimes I find it's not even what I might think it's going to be.
Yeah, same.
The client says, "What's that mean? What's benchmarking mean? Or what's key performance indicators should I be getting? Because I don't look at them. I don't know what they mean." And so they need some instruction. I think there's an opportunity to talk to some of your clients' team members and take them through some basic financial literacy training so that they can understand the reports. And that also includes the clients, so that they get this paper. Hopefully it's still not as bad as what I saw it when I was in practice many years ago, that you go to the client to talk about the annual accounts and you go to the bottom drawer and pull out the big envelope that we in those days used to mail the accounts to them, and then he'd unopen it in front of me. So he hadn't even read it. And that's what we've got to try to overcome by better educating the clients on the services.
I think we've got to be smarter, Pete. I really do. I think the future is going to demand accountants that are just that little bit smarter around the whole business advice model. So whatever your mantra is in the firm, whether it's to make the client's businesses worth more tomorrow than today, whether it's to improve profitability, strengthen cash flow, there's a million and one things you can hang a flag on. The real acid test is, are you talking about it or are you doing it? And the other big acid test is, are you billing it or not? Because I can't see the sense in doing this stuff for nothing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay then, Mark. Well, thank you very much for your time today. As always, you have hit the nail on the head on a number of the issues we discussed. For our viewers, if you've got any concerns about research and development or diversification in general, please contact me, peter@essbiztools.com.au, or you can ring Mark or contact Mark. Do you want to give us your email address? Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, Pete, yeah, the best one to get me on is mark.holton, Holton, @smithinc.com.
So
Or
thank
certainly
you.
find us, Pete, at the website Smithink, SMITHINK.com.
Okay, so that's at Smithink, everyone. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. This series on business advisory services continues next week on the 31st of March at 11:30 a.m. AEST, 12:30 p.m. AEDT next week. And my keynote commentator then is going to be Matthew Karakalakis, partner of AMK Law. And the brief I've given Matthew is we're going to talk about legal issues that relate to research and development and going through this process of perhaps getting a grant under the Accelerating Commercialisation and then looking to raise capital under the Early Stage Innovation Company. So if you wish to register for that webinar next week, please go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au. Mark, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure, Peter. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Goodbye.